the place the place she comes from doesn't have a functioning government. That's the interesting thing about Ilhan Omar that the Republicans are, predictably getting wrong. And we're going to talk about Ilhan Omar right after this, which is, they're always trying to push this line that Ilhan Omar.
After this road from Harry's Razors.
Right after this from Harry's Razors. They're always trying to push the line that Ilhan Omar is like kind of radical Muslim. She supports Al Qaeda, and they're asking her questions about, female genital mutilation and this and that and the other. Ilhan Omar is a socialist. Okay, Ilhan Omar is a feminist. Ilhan Omar, if you ask her, she probably thinks that Muhammad supported polyamory and heroin usage. The only reason Ilhan Omar goes around every day wearing that headscarf is because her culture says that if she doesn't, she's a whore, and Ilhan Omar is not a whore. There are certain rumors about who she married to get into, to get them into the country, but that's the opposite of being a harlot. That's if that's not family friendly, I don't know what is. But her family were all like apparatchiks when Somalia was a socialist country. Her grandfather was something like minister of lighthouses in Somalia. Her father was some kind of teacher trainer. Okay. Teacher trainer sounds like this minor position until you remember that this was a predatory socialist state. Suddenly teacher trainer sounds a lot more ominous.
Yeah.
And then when the Barre regime in Somalia collapsed, right, suddenly the Omars were in a lot of danger and they fled to the United States. And then 20 years later, the daughter of that family is a congresswoman. There's an angle to be pushed here, and it sure isn't the Al-Qaeda angle.
Well, Trump did say she was a communist.
Right. But the idea, probably if Ilhan Omar went back to Somalia, she would make it worse. Literally, it's true. When Somalia sent Ilhan Omar, they were not sending their best. They were sending the heads of death squads. They were sending torturers. They were sending the secret police. And some, I assume, were good people. But then Donald Trump said something even weirder about Ilhan Omar.
Okay,
right?
Let me quickly say something. So, two other points Scott Adams made, and I'm not saying this to defend Trump, I'm just saying it because it was an interesting other angle to this, was, do we really think if Peter Thiel, instead of being worshiping at the foot of Donald Trump, if he were attacking Trump every day and saying, Trump's an idiot, Trump's a racist, Trump's Hitler, blah, blah, don't you think Trump would say, would bring up the fact that Peter Thiel's German and say, like, Germany's got all this debt, or, oh, you call me Hitler, but, you're Hitler, or you're from where Hitler's from, or something. Like, do we
obviously in love with Adolf Hitler in some form?
As he said about Pat Buchanan, famously a white man. The idea being that, do we really think that Trump would only say this to someone of color? It's like, pretty sure he questioned Ted Cruz's nationality. Remember that? Like, in the same way that everyone said Donald Trump only questions Barack Obama's birth certificate because Obama is black. But he did the exact same thing to Ted Cruz, who, depending on what moment in time you're asking, is either white or Hispanic or not, or both, or neither, or whatever.
He's like George Zimmerman. He's white as the need arises.
Exactly. And the other thing was, they always say, Trump said, go back where you came from. The other part of the tweet is he said,
and then come back.
And then come back. Which, if you're going to be the racist, I've heard a lot of people say some form of that people from other countries should go back where they came from. And I have never, almost never, except unless they're trying to make some esoteric point about legal immigration, they almost never end that with, and then you should come back and show us how to fix our country. They never say that. They never say, those Mexicans should go back to Mexico and then fix the economy and then come back and get positions in our government and fix our country. They always say, go back and don't come back.
Yeah, Donald Trump is like the Joker of racism, where it's like, this country deserves a better class of bigot and I'm going to give it to him. But then Trump made a tweet about Ilhan Omar that was even stranger, and these are Donald Trump's words, and I'm reading them out. And, listen, audience,
he should, when he's not president anymore, if that ever happens, he should release an audiobook that's him reading his best tweets, or all of them. Him reading all of them, the complete Donald Trump You could start with maybe the greatest hits, and then you do for the record, for the historical record. He just reads aloud in whatever inflection he wants every tweet he's ever made.
Yes.
So that you could hear. Right now, we could just push the button and you could play it like him saying, "I've never seen a thin person drinking Diet Coke." Or my favorite from that same day, back in 2012, we were all so much younger then, was him saying, "Boy, is Coca-Cola Company mad at me, but I don't care. I'm still going to keep drinking that garbage." Which to this day I think remains his finest tweet ever, because I'm sure there was someone at Coca-Cola in a room crunching numbers who was tasked with the question of figuring out, does this on net help or hurt our brand? Donald Trump just said that he drinks Coca-Cola every day and will continue to, but also that it's garbage.
I mean, honestly, when you put it like that, you'd almost think Coca-Cola paid him.
I don't know.
Like they demanded an apology, and that was the best he could squeak out. Like, they're very mad at me, but I'll keep drinking that garbage. You know, you hold it up to the camera, and you're supposed to smile, but instead you just kind of grimace.
You go, this shit is garbage, but boy, do I love to swill it down. And then, like, is that an endorsement or is it not?
I mean, that's
a big gulp and smiles and gives him a thumbs up, and you're like,
that's pretty much on track with how Donald Trump talks about things he likes.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, hold on. So I'm going to read a tweet from Donald Trump. And now, audience, as you know, I try to keep, a level head. I try to keep a neutral tone when I read, when I talk on this podcast. Comment. Right? We give you the fair and balanced, unbiased, no spin.
Yeah. This isn't like Tom Woods trying to read a Krugman column.
Yeah, I'm going to try to read this as neutrally as possible. And so if you happen to detect any strange emphasis, a change in my tone, just know that it's purely unintentional and entirely coincidence. So Donald Trump tweeted, "When will the radical left congresswoman apologize to our country, the people of Israel, and even to the office of the president for the foul language they have used and the terrible things they have said? So many people are angry at them and their horrible, disgusting actions." This is a tweet that Donald Trump sent out on July 15th. This was a very strange tweet on Donald Trump's part. There's really a certain line of it that just didn't make any sense for the president of the United States to be saying, right? Why would Donald Trump be so insistent that Ilhan Omar apologized to the office of the president? I mean, the office of the president is not a person, Dan. How can you apologize to it?
That is a interesting question. I don't know how you can apologize to an office, but I don't really care about that. I mean, insult the president all you want. I'm more concerned about, will she apologize to the people of Israel?
I don't know.
Who, as we know, are a lot more important than
silly
things like the presidency.
Yes, they are. They are exactly as important to the president of the United States as our country
and the presidency itself.
Yeah, the presidency itself.
There's the sort of triumvirate, the holy trilogy of the American civic religion is, of course, the presidency, our country, and the people of Israel.
Okay, Dan, listen, you can't be echoing. This is unironic. Don't be echoing the phrase "the people of Israel" because the
oh shit! I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, everyone. You hardcore dabbled in tropes there. All right. So yeah, it was a very confusing tweet. But his rhetoric was escalated though at a campaign rally he was doing, because he does campaign rallies. That's a thing Donald Trump does when other people are still doing their debates. He was doing a rally in Greenville, North Carolina. And when he was talking about the squad, the crowd was actually chanting, send her back, about Ilhan Omar. And this was, I think, the only time, if ever, that Trump said something that seems to have erupted out of his hands, because he actually verbally disavowed the remarks, not during the rally, of course, no, later. He said that he disavowed those remarks and told people not to chant that anymore. But, I mean, the Republican Party, they were like dogs unleashed, between that Ilhan Omar tweet and after the chanting before Trump apologized. Suddenly, the Republican Party was not afraid of being called racist. I mean, they were giddy to talk about how Ilhan Omar was for female genital mutilation. She was incestuous, married her brother. Maybe she should go back to Africa. What kind of things are that? We talked about that article about, if Ilhan Omar is like criticizing Israel to prove she's an alpha male or whatever. Yeah. I mean, they did not care. It was all, you'd almost think that someone put the word out that Ilhan Omar was an acceptable target and that normal rules of respectability did not apply, that you wouldn't lose your bank account or your funding or your favorable media presence if you attacked Ilhan Omar, right? It was like she got it's like what's called a burn notice. They put out a burn notice on Ilhan Omar. That's what it was like.
She got the black spot.
Yeah.
In pirate lingo.
Yeah. And then Trump ended up turning it around, and he said he called the squad a racist group of troublemakers.
As we all know, Democrats are the real racists.
All right. I think we can move on from that. Speaking of Donald Trump and his ongoing war on women, this is something where, as I pointed out in the last episode too, it's always funny when something is news when we first see it, and then it stops being news by the time we record the episode. Because in this case, the fact that it's no longer news validates the whole story. For some of you who vaguely care, the U.S. women's soccer team won the World Cup or something. And the star of the team, a woman by the name of Megan Rapinoe, I swear to God, has pink hair, said that when she won, she wouldn't see, she wouldn't go to the White House to meet Donald Trump. And I'm pretty sure Donald Trump said, well, I didn't invite you. I don't know if he actually said that, but I'm pretty sure he did. And this started this whole big thing about how, why doesn't the women's soccer team get paid as much as the men's soccer team, even though the women's soccer team, it wins more championships than the men's one does.
Yeah.
Right? And the reason, of course, is that the men's soccer team gets 10 times as many viewers.
Yeah.
And are also better players.
Some wag on Twitter or somewhere asked the proverbial question, why is it that my son's Little League team has to pay money to play baseball when when the worst team in the MLB gets their star players get paid, giant salaries? Why is that? The entire country took a break from not knowing anything about or caring anything about the women's soccer team to remember that they exist and that they should be getting paid as much as the men. And then they immediately said, okay, we feel good now. I don't know who you're talking about anymore.
Yeah. We all forgot about it.
And everyone forgot about Megan, what's her name, and her stylish freshman boy look.
Yes. One thing in her defense, though, even though I'm sure implicitly she wanted the government to step in, and given her audience, she knew that would be like the real solution. She did, in fact, say, and if you want us to be paid more, show your support by coming out to games and buying merchandise.
Yeah, that was funny. She said that on Rachel Maddow's show. FEE had an article about it, the Foundation for Economic Education, about how the same people who would always say, Nike doesn't pay their workers enough, so boycott Nike. Now they were all going the opposite way and saying, when it's the women's team, they don't pay the women enough, so go support them and buy their stuff because that increases demand. Suddenly when it meets their needs, they understand economic principles.
Well, no, it's because an actual employee was there, and she's not stupid enough to say something like boycott women's soccer until they pay us more.
No, she's actually very smart, because another thing that was pointed out was that the women, as a percentage of the gross revenue, actually make more than the men. They get a higher percentage of the amount that the league brings in. So if you wanted to make it equal on those terms, you would pay the men more or the women less. So she can't say that. So what she did was, the other thing that was genius, from her point, giving her the benefit of the doubt, is she didn't say, we should make 8% more. She said we should make as much as the men, which is how you do negotiations. Mm-hmm. Because if you're going to say, I want a raise, you don't go into if you want $1 an hour raise, you don't go into your boss and say, can I have a 50-cent an hour raise? You go into your boss and you ask for more than you want, and you hope that they'll negotiate down to closer to what you want. Yeah. So if she's smart, based on the hair, my guess is she actually believes the bullshit she's spinning.
Oh yeah.
But either way, it's a great tactic for getting a raise, which is you pick someone who makes way more than you and earns it, and you say, I want to make as much as them. And then you frame it in such a way that the public thinks the only reason you wouldn't